What's up, everybody? Peter Ecstasy and welcome to another episode of Nothing But the Funk. So today, gotta do an episode looking at a very underrated band, and I'm talking about the Ohio Players. When everybody talks about the Mount Rushmore of funk, the four people they talk about, the faces you put up there be James Brown, Sly Stone, George Clinton, and Bootsy Collins. Got no problem with that. But hey, if there's a fifth one to put up there, it would, the Ohio Players would be that fifth, number 5 in that top 5. Now we can fight over 1 through 4, and those 4 are definitely ahead of the Ohio Players. But the Ohio Players, need to get their just due. Yes, we go. Ohio Players first chart with their 1972 song "Funky Worm," and they do well throughout the 70s. So really, the Ohio Players are there, throughout much, what I call, the 3 phases of funk. I mean, you got the late 60s and early 70s with Sly and George. Sly and James. And you got, the mid 70s, the late 70s with P-Funk. And then you got that third generation, with the Fat Bass era with Ohio Funk and Dad's Band and Zap and Lakeside and whatnot. And then Rick James doing his own punk funk thing that's different from the Fat Bass. But yet Ohio Players are around for those first 2 phases, and they're probably, Sly and James and George Clinton and P-Funk are in that first tier, and that second tier, is the Ohio Players. And if there's anybody there, they're in that second tier, it's arguable, but they're under the Ohio Players. So they're very underrated. I know a lot of them have passed. I mean, the front man, Leroy Sugarfoot Bonner, felt they should have been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I agreed. He's like, we're from Ohio. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is in Ohio. Totally agree. And at some point I'll do an episode on, who's missing from the 70s, because there is kind of a method about how, they're choosing people in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they're, hopefully they're not done with the 70s, because there's a few big acts that they have left. They've gotten most of them, but, the Ohio Players is one of those bands they have to get in there, and they really have to get, some more funk groups in there, particularly the harder core funk groups, because, you need the funk bands in there to tell the history of hip hop. And, funk is a broad category, and, it's not like, rap and hip hop where you can, there is some separation, and there is a degree of who's in what camp, and there's, rap's the overall umbrella, but, the harder core rap is hip hop and whatnot. Funk unfortunately doesn't have that, and, right now there's a lot more of the funk R&B hybrid group in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, rather than the quote George Clinton, the uncut funk folks. So, the Ohio Players to me are in that uncut funk category. They're out of Dayton, so they're the first group of the Ohio, and I'm working on an episode talking about, the Ohio funk groups and their influence. They actually started in 1959 and had, their initial run was from 69 to 84 and then 88. So yeah, let's jump in on and do the top 10 songs, because one of the issues is, in the 70s and the 60s, everybody was on, Motown was played on the same radio stations with the Beatles and the Stones and whatnot. And the 70s radio was very segregated. And, that did not go away until Michael Jackson kind of kicked the door in. And on MTV with Thriller, Top 40 played some black acts, but they were soul and R&B. They didn't play funk acts. I mean, they just did not. So, so unfortunately, a lot of white folks who came to age in the 1970s aren't as familiar with the funk bands, unfortunately, as they should be. Unlike today, where, white Gen Z and millennials can argue, obscure rap, hey, I like this rapper that way, they have a lot more, these younger generations have a lot more depth and understanding of black music than, folks who came of age in the 70s because of how the radio stations were structured back then. So, that being said, the Ohio Players still had 7 top 40 hits. They had 2 number ones on the pop chart still. Fire and Love Rollercoaster and Skin Tight hit number 13. So despite all that, and then, their sudden 1874 album Fire hit number 1, pop and R&B, and 1975, Honey hit number 1 R&B and pop number 2. So they did have a few songs break through and hit in the pop charts, but I don't know if folks who came of age, white folks, think hey, they were only had a few hits. They had a lot of hits on black radio, a lot of hits, and all these songs I'm about to name hit hard on black radio. So let's get going. I didn't go in any specific order here, so sometimes I do it by personal preference. Sometimes I do it chronologically. I just went, I think, the 3 most recognized songs, and then built, the list from there. So anyway, let's get going. So no, this isn't my preference necessarily. But hey, number 1, Fire. This again is the most recognizable song from the Ohio Players. I would definitely look up their live album, Old School. It's on the streaming services. I remember, I think the late 90s or early 2000s, I picked it up on cassette at a gas station along a highway. You remember those days. Doesn't happen much anymore, but the version of Fire live on Old School, from Atlanta, is just that fire. It is just amazing. And of course, what grabs your attention is the siren. Interestingly enough, Firehouse by Kiss uses the siren too, so who knows if they were borrowing from each other. Another tidbit is, interestingly enough, and I'll connect the dots a little later in the list, but they, the Ohio Players started off on Westbound Records, and that's what P-Funk, George Clinton and the early Funkadelic records were released on Westbound too. And the Ohio Players and George Clinton and the P-Funk folks got along. So we'll get to that later, as we go through the list. Number 2, Skin Tight. You got a sexy laid back funk. You got some organ here. You got some great keyboard playing. Really good funk keyboard playing. This clocks in at 7 minutes and 52 seconds. So this is that era. You never see that happen now, but this is that era where you could stretch out and really, get display your musicality in some ways. P-Funk would do it too. James Brown would do it. The Payback by James Brown, that's 7 or 8 minutes long too. But love the '70s, because of that. Number 3, love Rollercoaster again. That's another one that hit number 1 on pop and R&B. Come on, everybody knows that chicken scratch guitar. That's a world famous, rhythm guitar riff. The famous chorus. Got great background vocals in this. It's just a well-written, constructed song. It's very well mixed. As a fellow songwriter, just this song smacks. And then Prince used, loved this song. In the 2000s, he always, he would, play that riff in the middle of, that funky chicken scratch and another song, and then segue back into his own song. I mean, Prince loved this song. Number 4, Sweet Sticky Thing. So this is a ballad. This starts off as a ballad, and then it gets funky, and then it goes a ballad again, and then it gets funky again. Love this song. I mean, it's sexy. The chorus increases the intensity. It's just a very well written song. This was number 1 on the R&B charts. You have a really good interplay between the sax and the bass going on here. You got some very jazzy horns in here. You got late, got some guitar coming in late. That's really good. Just how the song is structured is just really, really well done. And, very underrated songwriters, and the fact that they could, essentially blend an R&B ballad and the funk song together is something special. Number 5, I Want to Be Free. Just like Sweet Sticky Thing, it's another ballad, but an interesting song structure. So you got a funky bridge. The song is about leaving a bad relationship. I want to be free. The vocals up the intensity, in the chorus you have the tenors there, belting essentially. You have the baritones and the tenor vocals blending nicely throughout the song. From the band members, you got some background vocals, you got some doo-wop going on here in the second verse. And again, remember, as I said earlier, the Ohio Players started in 1959, so that means, early on, before they were doing funk, they were doing doo-wop. So it's nice that they went back and got that doo-wop flavor and sprinkled it in a little. So this song comes in at 6 minutes and 50 seconds. Quintessential 70s, stretch a song out and make it special. And again, a very unique song structure that works very well. And these two, I Want to Be Free and Sweet Sticky Thing, I mean, very distinctive song structure. No one else, was able to pull that off. Number 6, Fopp. I mean, got a funky, distorted guitar. It's funk and it's rock. And there was, funk definitely has, a category there, that's funk and rock. I mean, the early funkadelic stuff, funkadelic, psychedelic. And so, it's more funk than rock, but, they kind of, they get a funky, distorted guitar there that just works. Number 7, Far East Mississippi. So you got that smooth, laid-back funk, but it's still a nasty kind of funk. You got a great keyboard playing. You got a lot of jazzy stuff going on in that funky guitar. So Far East Mississippi's number 7. Number 8, She Coo, number 1 on the R&B charts. I mean, you get another funky, rhythm guitar riff here, and you get some more funky bass going. Number 9, you get, basically an instrumental here. His hit number 9 on the R&B charts in 1976. Number 9, O-H-I-O. So I mean, they're out of Dayton. They're probably Ohio State fans. You know how the Ohio State fans do it. So, as an instrumental, other than chanting the OHIO, and of course, they were famous, live doing that. And then they introduced the vocoder, and here it is, 1976, and then, you know, you know, 79, 1980, when Roger and Zapp, drop out of Dayton, both bands coming out of Dayton, Roger Troutman uses the vocoder heavily in his music. So it's interesting, they're, influencing their fellow Dayton residents, with this song. Number 10, Jive Turkey. That comes in at 7 minutes and 9 seconds. So this was slang back in the day. You had to be around, I remember hearing Jive Turkey as a kid in the 70s. I didn't know what it meant. But so, if you're a Jive Turkey back in the day, you were unreliable, you made empty promises, you were dishonest and prone to exaggeration. So, yeah, you didn't want to be a Jive Turkey back in the day. Look, this is a funky cut. You got some really funky horns on this. So, yeah, number 10, Jive Turkey. Now, I had to do 2 honorable mentions. So, number 11, Funky Worm. This was their first hit, 1972. A hit number 1. It's fun, irreverent, silly. You got one of the band members imitating being a granny. You got it's really famous synth line. Got it. Can't explain it, but just go in and put in Funky Worm. A lot of hip hop artists have sampled that synth line. You got some great keyboard playing in here. So here's the P-Funk, the fun, irreverent silliness comes back, with P-Funk, with Parliament and, 76 on. So I say that because, they came up on Westbound together. And who knows, George Clinton's a genius, and who knows if it was the germ or the seed that led to the fun, silly aspect that, the sarcasm that we all grew, as Funketeers grew to love with P-Funk. And my last honorable mention coming at 10 is Ecstasy. This is a mid-tempo song. Is it a funk? Is it ballad? You decide, but it's sexy and it's sung with passion. So Ecstasy is number 12. So yeah, let's give the Ohio players some love. Fortunately, I think most of the members have passed. I have a feeling eventually they're going to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because, just as music changes, Rolling Stone, is updating their lists, as the music scene, permanently is getting, browner, when it comes to African Americans and the Latin influence. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is going to have to do that at some point. Because, you are writing history and to the, it's a good thing that the Rolling Stone magazine keeps updating its list, so it's, everybody fights over the Rolling Stone list, but at least they're trying to reflect society, and they are adjusting as the history changes, because as doors are shut on certain genres, new doors are open, and you start processing and putting different genres in their proper place when it comes to history. So at some point the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is going to have to do that. I do think Ohio players eventually get in because they had too much of an influence, and This is a hardcore funk band, and there's not enough hardcore funk bands in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame right now. There's a lot of Ohio players in hip hop, going back, to the early 80s to today. So you gotta put these dudes in. I mean, there's 40 years of hip hop where, the Ohio players are sprinkled in throughout. So yeah, I had fun doing this episode. These are my 12 favorite Ohio player songs. Some people might have some others. Hey, put them in the comments. It's all good. There's other good songs they did, and these lists are always a little controversial. So you want to have a friendly fight. I'm good with that. Just put them down there, in the comments. But do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Hey, I got 5 albums of my own. I consider my music rooted in the funk. I record under the name Exodus. They're here on my channel, but I'm on all the streaming services, so look up Exodus, Xodus. My first album is called Book 1. I also write science fiction and fantasy under the name Peter Exodus O'Coffer. So thanks for coming through. As I said, I do write science fiction fantasy. Got 2 novels and a novella on Amazon. So thank you again, and I will see you next episode.